To order. I will hand it over to Lori. Changing your name, Lori.
Been the same for the last 7
I
years.
know. I know.
Actually, it hasn't. It's changed. It is running. Thank you, everyone, council and planning commissioners. Tonight, we have our consultants from Echo Northwest and 3J Consulting here. We have Anais and Beth with us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Anais so we can go ahead and get started.
Great, and I'll hand it off to Beth for us to kick us off.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. I don't have much of a speaking part this evening. Mostly, we're talking about the 50-year plan vision. So here we are tonight to talk about the 50-year plan. What we're giving you is an update on outreach and engagement. What did we do? What did we hear? And then what's the draft 50-year vision statement? Just so you guys know, I'm hearing an echo right next to me. If I sound like I'm stuttering, that's why. Thank you. I appreciate that. So what we've got up here is our short-term schedule. So the schedule for the project through the end of the year. So we've done all of the stuff that we said we would do up to June. And in June, evidently, we weren't doing anything at all. In July, we've got this check-in. We've got another meeting with our fabulous committee where we're going to be talking tomorrow about almost exactly the same things. On next Saturday, this Saturday, we will be at the farmers market getting public feedback on the vision statement. Then we've got some work coming up in August around a different subject, the economic opportunities analysis. And then in September and October, we'll be doing some work, but we won't be seeing all of you. We'll be talking with our committee again in November about the economic opportunities analysis. And then we've got another check-in with you all in December. So we are making progress on the project, some of the progress you haven't heard about, but we're certainly in a good place with the vision statement, I think, unless you disagree tonight. So here's our overall project schedule. This is going to go in through 2024. 2023 is going to be a lot about urban growth boundary. So some of you will hear far more than you ever wanted to hear about urban growth boundary.
Already been there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, you're going to have to go back there
I
again.
was there in 2010. Bill was there too.
I think we'll have some interesting discussions in 2023, but hopefully interesting in the good way. So I'll hand it over to Anais.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Public open houses. I was just curious if one of those would be the Summerfest, like big thing we've got coming up in September or not.
I don't believe we have one planned for
Okay.
this, for September. Yeah.
I just kind of feel like a lot more people would be there than at the farmer's market. Not to disregard the farmer's market by any means. I was just trying to think of an opportunity to get more people.
Absolutely. This one is timed in a certain way to get feedback in like a very distinct
Sure.
time frame. And then if we do have any opportunities within that time frame, we'd certainly consider that.
Sounds like you've got it covered.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So I'm here to give you an update on all of the work we've done in the last couple of months. I know that some of you have attended some of the events or conducted community conversations and such. So we're really excited to just share with you all tonight what we heard from all of that outreach, what we did, and then also review the draft vision statement. And I say draft because it is certainly a draft, and we're really here to get your feedback on how that reads. There are multiple things happening through the spring and the summer. The first thing was there was a community-wide vision survey. It launched on the project website in March and it ran through the end of June. Concurrent with the vision survey, there were also a number of community conversations that were being held with community groups and organizations. I'll talk a little bit more about that concurrent with the vision survey. And then in addition, we also did a workshop at the annual town meeting, which I know some of you or maybe most of you were all at. And yeah, so that was really great turnout. And we really overall just had a really excellent level of engagement in terms of quality of feedback. So we were really quite excited about that. So annual town meeting workshop, that was very exciting. We had part of the presentation was about describing what a housing needs analysis was and what an economic opportunities analysis was and how these pieces all work together for the 50-year plan. We had a workshop afterwards. About, I think, 80 or so residents or community members attended the annual town meeting. And then I think we had about 40 to 50 folks that stayed for the workshop. So I thought it was quite well attended. And essentially, as some of you may remember, there were a number of base maps and multicolored stickers and markers. And really the purpose of this activity was to get folks to start thinking about where does new development go or not go? What are the things we need to preserve? What are the transportation connections that we wish we had? Where would new homes or new neighborhoods go or new businesses? So we scanned all of those base maps with everyone's markups. Everyone worked in groups of about 6 to 8 folks around each table. So we have those maps digitized. And really what we were looking for are some key themes and trying to understand what are some major priorities that we're hearing through these discussions at the roundtable, and how do those match with some of the priorities and aspirations we're hearing through the vision survey and through our community conversations. So that was, I would say, a very fun event. In addition, we had a number of community conversations. These were primarily led by our stakeholder advisory committee members. And they facilitated community conversations with 8 different groups that actually engaged over 100 people through kind of more focused one-on-one targeted discussions. So we spoke with the Parks and Recreation Committee, the Scappoose Bay Watershed Council, the Scappoose Public Library Board of Directors, South Columbia County Chamber of Commerce, Habitat for Humanity, Scappoose Foursquare, the Community and Senior Center, and as well a group of local business owners. So those were all facilitated and organized by our stakeholder advisory committees, for which we're very thankful for their lift in that. And that was really kind of just a major role for them, was to help us connect with the communities or the groups that they're well connected to. Yes.
Regards to the local businesses, was it a mix of small and large business?
You know, I'm not quite sure who the actual business owners were. Would you remind me the name of our stakeholder member that?
So it was Brian Rosenthal who reached out and connected with the business owners. And I don't know that I saw a list of the individual businesses. Yeah.
Thank you.
You can certainly ask him. We'll see him tomorrow night. So this was all while we had our vision survey open. We had about 178 survey responses. That does include the notes from 8 of those community conversations. So it's kind of our portal for collecting everyone's notes from those community conversations, as well as getting responses to our online survey. The survey was promoted through the monthly citywide newsletter, the project webpage, social media, and all of the community listservs as well. So any questions about kind of what we did or who we talked to or why or how? Nope. All right. So after we closed the survey, we got all the notes from our community conversation. We digitized the maps and the notes from the annual town workshop. We compiled all of this feedback into essentially a very large Excel spreadsheet and started reading through each of the individual comments and started coding some of the key themes and the key ideas that were coming up in all of our comments. This is just, I love the word cloud concept because it's kind of nice to just visualize a little bit what were people talking about, what were people writing about. So some of the key ideas that came up when we were asking the question, what makes Scappoose special today, is definitely small town feel. I would say was the #1 thing we were hearing over and over. Scappoose has a friendly and close-knit community, access to nature and the great outdoors, general access to the greater metropolitan region, affordability, natural beauty, cleanliness, community events, being family friendly, first responders and just police response in general, a strong economy and good local businesses, great schools, history and heritage, safety and low crime, and a sense of quiet. So those are some of the ideas. They all kind of speak out a little bit in this word cloud. But really, we were just trying to build, as I think we had said to our stakeholder advisory committee, trying to build a bit of a language base so that when we do develop the vision statement, it was reflective of the kind of words or ways that people were describing the things that they loved about Scappoose or the things they wanted to see in the future. And then what about Scappoose would you like to change in the future? So kind of same idea, same concept in terms of the word cloud. But some of the key themes that rose was having more tourism, less traffic, and better traffic management. Limits to growth and development. So we're seeing a lot of interesting and competing ideas here, but there was limits to growth and development, limits to large housing development, preservation of greenery and open space, greater access to natural areas, greater housing affordability and opportunity, more community amenities and spaces, better access to community resources, more public transport options, a greater variety of retail options, the ability to attract more local businesses, connected pedestrian infrastructure, well-maintained infrastructure, maintaining a greater sense of community, boosting local economic development, and then maintaining safety and low crime rates. So just some kind of key things that popped up in a lot of the feedback we were receiving. I know that your packet for this evening had the outreach summary and also had the appendix for all the raw data that we got. I know it's a lot to review, but I just wanted to pause here and see if anyone had any questions or thoughts or any reflections on the feedback that you have in your packet or anything I shared up until now. Yes,
This is the easy part.
it is.
Fixing these things, it's hard.
Yes,
And,
certainly.
you know, it's easy to identify them. There seems to be a lot of attention to the 50-year plan, and rightfully so. I think if we don't do something at the Adventure Festival, we'd be missing a key opportunity to communicate. And I think I would recommend, I don't see anybody here on the 50-year committee that's besides 8 people, volunteers.
I'm on the.
Okay. Well, even if the committee themselves were to man a booth and do something with it, there's a lot of information to pass out, even at this stage. And I think that it's a great opportunity, not just for our own citizens in the city, for people coming to the town, eventually, you know, maybe want to move here. That can be a catalyst saying, hey, I kind of like this place. You know, they're doing something, they're looking to the future. So I think, my own opinion is if the 50-year committee can pull something together by Adventure Festival and have a booth there, it would serve the city and the community very well.
Thank you.
In reviewing the key elements of what in the previous slide, I noticed that you'd started out with small town atmosphere. So in my experience with qualitative data, it's very subjective from who is providing that data. Small town atmosphere, I think, is a good starting point for us because it is part of our fabric, right? I think that it's part of our city motto. It's how people are attracted to our community. It's what keeps and retains our community members. So I think my question is, in getting this information, granted there was a lot of input, how do we go back to better define what these things are? I think there were a lot of attributes that you listed that we probably collectively would all agree are what we would call a small town and what makes a small town. But if I were to try to describe what a small town atmosphere is to somebody that's never been to a small town, those are the elements that I think that we should really be trying to capture. And so as we continue to work through this, one, is there an opportunity for us to, I don't know, even identify participants to confirm or provide, feedback on the information that's already been presented to us to ensure that we're going down that correct path? And then in addition, are we able to I know that timing is difficult and trying to get another outreach, but I think that having that presence, the farmer's market is a fantastic opportunity for us to have a presence. I would also agree that if possible, if we can have a presence and if it would be volunteer from committee members to have a table at the Adventure Festival, I think that would be a step in the right direction for us to show that we are being transparent in providing participation in this process, but also ensure that we're capturing the voice of the people.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that. And, the purpose of being at the farmer's market is to essentially report back on exactly what we're reporting to tonight. So we will have a booth that has this information, has the word clouds. And essentially our hope is that we can get the draft vision statement out and share with folks what we've done, what we've heard. Is this on the right track? That's really the main question at this point is really trying to report back out and then share what we've done with that information. I think the farmers market, as you said, is going to be a great opportunity, and we could certainly work with staff to identify further opportunities to share out the vision statement. It is still in draft form, and then will be finalized. So maybe there is an opportunity to share something in a final version September or something like that.
And if you could remind me, the timeline to have the vision statement is in that September month, in the month of September, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe it goes back to what is the purpose of the vision statement. The purpose of the vision statement is to really complement and guide the technical work that's going on through this 50-year plan process. The 50-year plan process is really a culmination of a lot of technical work. The vision statement, so I guess to say, the vision statement, we're hoping to wrap up by September so that as Beth and Echo Northwest starts the economic opportunities analysis, there are concepts that are being captured in the vision statement that are then also kind of flowing through the policies or the strategies that come out of developing an EOA, updating your comprehensive plan, things like that. So the hope is that the vision statement, creates this foundation for all of that work. And that work is starting relatively soon. I'm sure there can be a little bit of overlap. But I would say by September, we should have something pretty finalized.
And what I'd also say is you've got other projects that aren't part of the 50-year plan that very much feed into this. So you've got your parks plan, master plan update, which quite clearly you can hear in the vision, in the information leading up to the vision statement, how very important your natural spaces are. And so that's going to, depending on timing and how those things work out, there's elements of that will feed into the 50-year plan as well.
And I will also say, throughout the entire 50-year plan process on that schedule, there's actually a number of check-ins with the community. There's a number of open houses or some sort of community-focused event that happens at key parts of the process. And I think, just to give a bit of context and clarification, when the project team was kind of discussing how do we, put out this draft vision statement or share out with the community what we've heard, we actually chose a farmer's market because I think in kind of a post-COVID era, it's a lot easier to go where people already are gathering rather than trying getting them out to a public open house on a weeknight where they've got kids and food. It's like it can be kind of difficult. And I think that right now, personally, I've seen a bit of participation waning when we're holding these individual events. So the idea of having something at the Adventure Festival, having these like community events that are already scheduled that are going to just really bring out a lot of folks is actually kind of a perfect opportunity to be in front of people and share out some information like this. So those are great suggestions, and I know I'll work with Lori to identify other opportunities throughout the fall, winter, and spring of next year to line up with some of those key open houses or community events, essentially, in the process.
And to add on to that, your question about the small town atmosphere, as we're doing the economic opportunities analysis, I'm positive that that's going to come up as one of the strengths of Scappoose. And so always, coming out with, well, what does that mean exactly? Our committee can help guide us. Where that really matters for what does it mean is what do we not want to see change? And to the extent that that's part of the economic opportunities analysis, or later looking at comprehensive plan policies for housing, So we'll be having those discussions with our committee, certainly.
If I could follow up real quick. So Anasea,
Nice, no problem.
apologies.
No worries, no worries. It's difficult.
Rebecca?
Beth.
Beth, my apologies. Good night. My notes.
I like that one. I had trouble learning
Ryan.
to say her name.
All right.
And
I want to say, you started out by saying that we have competing aspects on both of these key elements, right? And so I appreciate, Beth, that you had indicated that we will use, well, you both indicated this, that we will be using this as a foundation, as a building out of that framework. And so what you're providing back to us is giving us that sense of understanding how this process will work. So I appreciate that very much. But with these competing issues of growth and preservation, let's call it, I think that's where we're going to start having a lot of back and forth, not in a bad back and forth, but the sense of we have to have these conversations to better understand, because small town atmosphere doesn't allow for job growth because to a certain extent, right? And so if we want to have housing that's available for a variety of folks, yet we want to preserve what we have currently, I think that there's a lot of conversations to have. So I don't want to take more time. I appreciate you both explaining this to me. Thank you.
Great. I have so much to say.
Go ahead.
I think of a small town atmosphere. Also think of the times when people you still hear
In
me?
the microphone.
we can hear you. It's just for the
Okay,
recording.
but can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think of, small town atmosphere or something like where people care about other people and they're helping other people. People don't want to lose that. And that's one of the reasons they come to a community like this, because you know your neighbor, you know who they are, you take care of each other, you watch out for each other. Make sure that if something happens, that you can come in there and help them out. So don't, that's one of the big things I see.
And wanting to capture that exactly, that exact
To
essence.
capture that.
That's exactly what I needed to hear, Bill. Thank you very much for that.
More front porches.
Right, yeah.
It is interesting. I would echo that. I fully agree with that statement. After having done a lot of this work in a lot of communities, I find that the small town kind of feeling that people really hold on to is actually really about people. And it's about connection. And people and connection are one thing, place is another. And you can connect people to place. And, the 50-year plan is land use work. And we can do our best to capture people in land use, but it is also land use. And so I think there's also a lot to glean from the idea that small town community means things like people and events and programmatic elements of the community that in the face of growth and development, you still have these fibers of activities and events and things that bring people together, school districts, what have you. So I just keep that in mind as we kind of work through the concepts of growth and development and the tension that exists between preservation and development, is how do you kind of center people in that regardless of what's happening around you. Okay, so I'm gonna just shift gears and I'm gonna share the draft vision statement. It's in your packets.
It's the last page in that statement.
And I'll just read it out loud. I'll read it slowly. You can follow along. It's organized into 4 sections.
Folks.
It's a page.
Oh, it's condensed from the current one.
Yeah, and I actually was going to, I'll talk about actually the current 2016 community vision. We can talk a little bit about how the two might interact, because I think there will probably be a little bit of overlap between the two, and we can think about how they work together. So this is, of course, the vision statement for the draft vision statement for the 50-year plan. So it's really a little bit more land use based. So we'll start with, over the next 50 years, Scappoose will grow into a community with friendly and connected neighborhoods. Scappoos's small town feel is enhanced through a connection to people and a celebration of place. Neighborhoods are nestled into the landscape and built to ensure families can live, work, learn, and thrive in Scappoose across multiple generations. The community invests in its youth through excellent schools and modern facilities. The school district connects families and works in tandem with the city to expand access to community resources, programs, and amenities for people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. Neighborhoods include a diversity of housing choices with unrivaled access to natural areas and a network of local walking and biking trails. They remain safe, friendly, and accessible for all. Over the next 50 years, Scappoose will grow into a community with a strong and innovative economy. Scappoose invests in a lively and attractive downtown core. The pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use environment draws in small, locally owned businesses that provide a wide variety of services and retail options. The hyper-local quality and character of Scappoose's downtown and heritage industries is complemented by its position as a hub for world-class manufacturing, innovation, and technology. OMEC and PCC provide innovative facilities that promote workforce training and create synergies for furthering education, research and development, and clean industry. The duality of local and national economic engines provides sustainable living wage jobs and opportunities for investment back into the community. In Scappoose, the candle burns bright. Over the next 50 years, Scappoose will grow into a community with unparalleled access to the great outdoors. Scappoose's lush forests, waterways, and open spaces are intentionally preserved through clustered development and the enhancement of key community amenities like the CZ Trail, Veterans Memorial Park, and Chapman Landing. Linear trails along riparian corridors connect neighborhoods north to south, and there is a balance between improving access to outdoor recreational opportunities and conserving natural spaces for the protection of habitat and ecosystems. A culture of stewardship and an eye towards a changing climate ensures development is thoughtful, responsive, adaptive, and resilient. Over the next 50 years, Scappoose will grow into a community with well-planned infrastructure. Scappoose boasts modern and reliable public facilities and services that support carefully planned growth. Infrastructure improvements are built in tandem with development and are built for redundancy in the face of natural hazards. A connected road network aids in local circulation and relieves traffic along Highway 30. Geographic barriers like the railroad and Highway 30 are overcome through safety improvements and upgraded pedestrian and bicycle facilities that provide safe and efficient travel routes. Along with enhanced transit, local trail systems blend with the pedestrian and bicycle network, promoting transportation options across town that are safe, accessible, and enjoyable for all. You're right, it was a lot.
No, just, we have a lot to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
But you have a lot of opportunities. Also.
Absolutely.
I have a comment. Where's my microphone? Here we go. Fine, yeah. I've worked with visioning statements and things like that before, and I think they're good. It's really hard to make them meaningful past a couple years, and 50 years is a really long time. Is there anything built into this so that we are? I don't have the answer to this. I'm identifying a problem, that we are somehow cognizant of what has happened in this 50-year plan when it's completed 5 years from there and 10 years from there, so that otherwise there's just going to be a document that's sitting somewhere and it'll have no impact on what we're doing. So is there anything, you guys do this for a living, so maybe what do you build into it so that it has some value in the future? So we'll look at it.
So I'm going to take this from a really technical point of view that it isn't very directly connected to people for a moment or two. So what we're doing in the 50-year plan is we're doing 20 years of planning. So do we have enough land for housing, for employment growth, for other uses like parks, et cetera? And then we're looking at, well, what about the years 30 through 50 years? So we're planning urban reserves so that we know in 30 years, if you need an urban growth boundary expansion, or even in 15 years, whatever. If you need an urban growth boundary expansion, you know where you're going to go. And more importantly than that, as you're planning your infrastructure, which is of course really expensive, put an oversized pipe over here, put more road capacity over there, because those are the places that we're going to grow when we're expanding our urban growth boundary. So is there something that connects directly back to in 5 years when we're doing a transportation system plan, for instance? And we know that there is land for housing in some area of town. And then we've got an urban reserve beyond that. So we know what we should be thinking about, at least at a very high level for the transportation system. And so you can plan your transportation system better in those areas where you're looking at long-term growth. Without urban reserves, cities are within their urban growth boundary and they can't look out. They can't plan for infrastructure outside of it. So at a really fundamental level of what does a city do, part of that is provide infrastructure. This gives you a roadmap for where are we going to provide infrastructure down the line. And whether that's, 45 years or 20 years or 30 years, whatever. It's somewhere down the line. So you're getting that long range. I'll hand it back to Anais for people.
Thanks. I would also say another way of maybe looking at this 50-year plan is it's more of a process than a plan or a document. The 50-year plan is the exercise of the EOA, it's the exercise of the HNA, it's the exercise of identifying if and where and when you would need urban reserves, if and when and where you would need an urban growth boundary. So it's a culmination of a lot of different pieces that we've labeled as part of this map for 50 years. So I would kind of, maybe approach this as a process versus a plan that's going to be on a document, a plan document that's going to be on a shelf necessarily. Yeah.
And then I would just say the other component of this is it will update pretty substantially our comprehensive plan and then our development code. The development code gets used daily and will be the change agent, if you will, to seeing real life changes on the ground with new development. So it's
I like that part for sure.
yeah, it's a document, but really it's the summary of the work that's been done is what the 50-year plan is. So it's certainly not going to sit on a shelf. It's definitely going to inform a lot of decisions that are made, and it's going to change the development code and comprehensive plan.
It sounds like a 20-year plan with an additional 30-year forecast. Okay.
Bit. And I think
As
it brings up
understand
some really interesting questions that some of what Anais was saying will probably be featured quite a bit in the parks plan. Some of what she was saying about economic development really piqued my interest and made me say, hey, Papoose downtown? Honestly, where is that? And what should we be doing about that? And
That's
I
a good
think
question.
it's a great question and one that we're not going to solve in this project, but can we further it along?
You say you
that's-
can't solve it in this project?
No, it's a big problem. But we can ask the right questions to move to move it further down the line.
So for me, the way that I break this down, I think is important to keep in mind too, is the vision statement that we just read is basically the outcome of what we're, trying to accomplish. But really this comes down to something that is, I don't want to say it's less complicated, but it goes back to land use. And basically that's what we're trying to do. So when you think about, these obtainable goals and stuff, it's really important just to always relate them back to land use. And because that's really what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish land use goals to basically accomplish these outcomes further down. So because when I hear this and I read this, I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, this is a lot for us to do. How are we ever going to do this? But this will naturally come. The hope is that this will naturally come through the land use planning piece of it. And that's really what the focus is of what we're doing here.
And I would say that's actually an excellent segue into just a quick discussion about how this relates to the 2016 community vision. And I would say, we were kind of like, how does this work with our comprehensive plan and the existing vision statement. And I really see this 50-year vision statement as doing exactly that, being a lot more land use based. You'll notice there are a number of kind of wonkier planner terms like mixed use environment, and kind of terms like that, as opposed to we aspire to be a pleasant town. So it's a little bit more pointed, it's a little bit more specific, and it actually even builds upon the 2016's community vision. Its first paragraph is about smart growth. The 50-year plan is a mechanism for smart growth. So I kind of see the relationship between the two working in that way.
I can't help but think of a comment that I heard at the annual town meeting in the workshop afterwards, following the presentation. And someone who was participating said, well, why? Why do we need to have more housing? Why do we need to grow? Why can't we just stay the way we are? And so I would just be curious what your, methodical response would be to that. Like, some people don't want to see anything change.
Right.
And they wish that it would go back, right?
Right.
Even to
Yeah.
where it's been.
Yeah. I think, change is inevitable. Change will happen regardless of whether or not we want it. And so really the only thing we can do is plan for change and mitigate the effects of change, which is really essentially what all of this work is what is going to change, what's going to happen, whether or not we like it. I guess that's kind of my initial thought is how do we get in front of change, which we know will continue forever.
I think maybe in this person's eye, it was like, well, if you build all these apartments,
Yeah.
then you're just going to be
It will come.
inviting people to come. So why even build the apartments if we don't want more people here?
Well, I would ask the question, do you want your children to be able to live in town? Do you want your grandchildren to be able to live
Yeah.
in town? If they can't find housing that's affordable, then they can't live in town. You've invited change in when you had the OMIC develop here. The OMIC's going to naturally lead to a certain change. So if you're not planning for change, then you're going to become a community with less and less affordable housing. You're just so close to Portland. It's an asset and also, something that's going to push the community. So if you don't plan for it, you're going to become less and less affordable. You'll have less of some of the amenities that you want to have. And so assuming that change is to some degree inevitable, and we're not planning for massive amounts of growth. That's something to keep in mind also. We on the housing side, you can't plan for massive amounts of growth, which I'm sure you guys have all heard about. And on the economic development side, I think you've got a set of policy choices that we'll be talking about how do you plan for growth and what kind of growth do you want to encourage. So if you're not proactive about it, you'll just get run over by it.
Thank you.
I see part of a 50-year plan also has to have some imagination, because you can't imagine what's going to happen. How are we going to fuel the vehicles that come here? The years may be different. How we're going to do something else is pretty different than what's done now. Take that one.
I think that's certainly true. And then acknowledge the fact that whatever we're planning for right now, we're going to be somewhat wrong. If we're a little wrong, that's okay. If we're dreadfully wrong, then hopefully the city will have had a chance to make a correction for it as time goes on.
Well, and that's really what this is. It's us pretty much guessing what we think the future is going to hold and trying to set the city up, 20, 30, 50, so on years ahead of time to be as well postured as possible for these things. We don't have a crystal ball. We're making best guesses. We're, with the infrastructure where we think things are going to be. We're trying to, these things will essentially guide. I think it would be not realistic to think that the decisions that the 50-year committee is, working on is not going to guide development and other things because it's going to be set up for that. But it is. It's a lot of it is guessing and trying to do the best that we possibly can with infrastructure so that the city is set up, years and years, decades from now. So this is a really responsible thing to be doing, I think. But we also need to realize that we don't have a crystal ball and we're doing the best we can with it.
Thank you. One more thing to say, if we had 50-year plan 70 years ago, we wouldn't have all of this infrastructure over here that's had to be upgraded for, many, many, many years now. The homes that were put on cesspools and there's no sidewalks, there's no, nothing, and so the 50-year plan should prevent something like that. We were already preventing something like that reoccurring, but that's the result when you don't have looking at the future and planning ahead, things like that happen. And they've turned into, the decent homes and things, but it's been a long, arduous process to get all that infrastructure put in, and a lot of it's still not there.
Well, you did have a 50-year plan back then. We started to establish urban growth boundaries by about 1980.
Not in Columbia County.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know.
We were one of the last.
Okay. So, you have like a 35-year plan. But the world has changed since then. And so some things that we did back then are clearly mistakes now. Or we just need to do them differently now. And that'll be true in the future also. It's just to the extent at which we can make more informed decisions and make them proactively and set the city up for making future decisions proactively.
Thinking of future citizens, has there been any engagement with our youth? If we're thinking about trying to guide a community for the generation that will most likely have their children here, if not grandchildren, at least putting it out to the schools to say, is there an opportunity to participate to a certain extent?
Yeah, I would say I would love to explore youth engagement opportunities. I think working with the high school, if there's a leadership class or a civics class, those could be great opportunities for both kind of learning about what community development and civic engagement is, and then also getting feedback on what we're working through. We can certainly note that as, as I had mentioned earlier, there's going to be specific touch points with the community throughout the entire process that's aligned with the EOA, the HNA, the comp plan, et cetera. So I think we can maybe look into youth opportunities as well at each of those touch points.
Anything else?
I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, that's your question. You're on the right track. Thank you.
Anything missing?
On
or-
a track. I like
on
how
a
you
track.
said
Okay.
that.
I was just going to say too that there is a survey up that people can respond to that asks this question. Oh, you have that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, there is a survey. We just launched it, but essentially it's just another mechanism to get feedback on the draft vision statement. We'll be pushing it out at the farmers market in addition to kind of having folks come over and read the vision statement, engage with us, learn about the project, et cetera. So yes, the farmers market event is this Saturday, 9 to 2, 9 to 12, 9 to 2, 9 to 2. Yes. And yeah, we'll have the vision survey available. We'll also be taking people's feedback on Post-it notes at the booth. And yeah, we'll likely have the survey open for another month or so, if not a bit more. So there's ample opportunity to push that out through all of the various communication channels that the city has.
Thank you very much.
I don't know, Isaac, if you're going to tee something up, but I just checked like our Facebook page and the farmers market Facebook page, and there isn't anything about this presence that's going to be happening on Saturday. I mean, I would love to push that out or invite people to attend that. I assume that's probably something you could or are putting. Yeah, thumbs up. Thanks.
In regards to having something about the 50-year planning committee at the Adventure Fest, I'm happy to bring that up tomorrow. You want to touch base tomorrow before and just kind of see what that looks like, and we can get the
Sure, and
temperature on that
remind me
from the
what
group.
weekend is that again? September 10th?
And
10th.
So it could be that the reason I kind of did not include that, I will be out of town that weekend. And so, but that doesn't mean we can't have a presence there. Absolutely. We could have some people from either from staff or have some committee members there.
I mean, there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of people. that-
Yeah,
We should definitely have some sort of presence.
I saw 3 people in the back checking their schedules.
So even if it's just one, even if it's just one of us there, like, I mean, I'm happy
Yeah.
to take a 3-hour shift or whatever. I'm sure with the size of the committee, we can find some people that are committed to doing this. Just, it doesn't mean that it has to be manned all the time, but if we can at least make an effort and have a presence there, I think that will mean a lot.
Certainly, and we also have all of the materials and the booth and the event, the poster boards and everything that we're gonna have on Saturday. We could just keep and hand them off for anyone that wants to put that up. Yeah, we can talk. That sounds great.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
I think that's it.
All right, nothing else? Work session is adjourned.